Hello everyone, my name is Ren, and on my channel I talk about all things writing and reading related, and today we are going to be talking all about fast drafting, also known as zero drafting. No clue what fast drafting is? Wondering if it's right for you? That's what I'm here for, and today I'm going to be breaking down what fast drafting is, what the pros are of fast drafting, what the cons are if I've fast drafted in the past, and overall what my thoughts are on fast drafting. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to be referring to this as fast drafting for the whole video, but just keep in mind that this is the same thing as zero drafting. And before we get into today's topic, definitely make sure to like this video and hit the big red subscribe button down below and turn on those post notifications so that you know every time that I post a new video, because I'm lovely, so you should want to know. I post videos every Tuesday about writing and reading related things, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Also, I'm trying a new video format today, so let me know in the comments if you guys like it or not. So first of all, what the hell is fast drafting? Fast drafting, as you might have guessed, is the practice of intentionally writing your book fast. Most of you guys watching are probably familiar with NaNoWriMo, which stands for National Novel Writing Month, which takes place in November, where a bunch of writers strive to write 50,000 words in 1 month. And a lot of people will try to write a full novel in 1 month. I've even heard of writers writing multiple novels in 1 month for NaNoWriMo. That is considered fast drafting. And later in this video, we will touch on what is considered fast drafting and then what would be considered normal drafting time-wise. And typically most novels that are fast drafted aren't edited as they're written, so they are literal, like, complete first drafts with no edits, and 90% of the time they're going to be very underwritten. I've noticed that most people who fast draft are underwriters, because when you're not writing all of the content that your story requires, your word count's going to be less, which means it's going to be easier for you to finish a book faster, whereas overwriters, who are writers who are going to include more content than their book requires, aren't going to be able to fast draft as easily because there's going to be a lot more content that they're going to be writing. I'm sure there are some overwriters out there who have fast drafted, but most of the time that's not the case, and most of the time people who fast draft are going to be underwriters. And in general, the aim of fast drafting isn't to have a quality first draft, it's just to get the first draft written, and we will talk about the pros and cons of that in this video. And honestly, I'm not sure why, but I feel like the past couple of years I've noticed a bit of a trend almost with a lot of writers doing fast drafting and zero drafts, which I don't necessarily think is bad, but I haven't seen a lot of people talk about both the good parts and the bad parts of fast drafting, which is why I'm making this video for you guys today. I'm going to start off with listing all of the pros, and then we'll go ahead and list all of the cons. So let's just jump right into the pros. Pro number one is that you can get the first draft over with. For a lot of writers, drafting is super overwhelming, so for them to be able to just get a draft out and over with can be a huge relief. In my opinion, this is probably the most stated benefit for fast drafting. I read a lot of articles and I watched a lot of videos in preparation for this video, and nearly every single one of them mentioned this. And I can definitely see why, especially for new writers, and I feel like this gives a lot of people a sense of instant gratification, which is another pro that I've seen in a lot of articles, which is that when you have a fast draft done, you can have that gratification of knowing that you finished an entire book. And if you've never finished a book before, it's really exciting to be able to say that. The next pro is number two, which is that it can help newbie writers get started with their writing journey. This is kind of similar to the first point, but I wanted to list it on its own because this was largely my experience, because spoiler alert for later in this video, I used to fast draft a lot of books, and that really helped me a lot with my writing journey. That was back in my fanfic days where I was drafting a lot of fan fiction. I think I wrote like 6 books in 2 years, which is fucking crazy. They were long books too, and I think that it can be, like I said before, overwhelming to get started with drafting. And also when you draft, you learn a lot about yourself and about, you know, your writing style, and it's just a really great learning experience. So I can also understand how for new writers it's very appealing to get the first draft done, because that's kind of the first step in the writing process. Fast drafting is something that I can definitely see the appeal of for newbie writers, predominantly versus more seasoned writers. And then pro number 3 is that you have something to work with. So this refers to the dreaded editing process. You know it's hell of a lot easier than working with a blank page, working with pages and pages filled with writing, and you just have to improve it. Personally, this is why I love the editing process, because you already have a ton of content and you're just trying to improve it. It's a lot less overwhelming for me than drafting a book. And that can be the case for a lot of writers. So if that's you, then fast drafting could be a great idea. But again, I say this is true for some writers, but not all writers, because I know a lot of people are the exact opposite. A blank page doesn't intimidate them, but having to revise an entire novel can be extremely overwhelming. And I feel like most people are overwhelmed by both, but at the same time, I think that the majority of people are going to lean towards one more than the other. I also wanted to mention here that because you'll be getting your draft done sooner, you are also going to be able to enlist critique partners and eventually beta readers sooner, which means that you are going to have outside feedback that can help you so much when revising your book. But also there is this caveat to this, which I just feel like I should mention, which is that in my experience with critique partners, almost all of my CPs have recruited me to help when they're drafting, and they will make the changes as they're drafting. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword here, because while you can technically get feedback on a full manuscript earlier than someone who is taking longer to draft could, people who take longer to draft have the time to edit as they go, and they have the time to get feedback from other people. Obviously this doesn't work for everyone, but for writers who this does work for, it's kind of not always a pro, because for example, for me, I have existing relationships with a couple of CPs. So once I have a chapter or two for my CPs, I can automatically send it to them, which is technically sooner than someone who might be fast drafting. So again, this all depends on context and your writing style and your relationship with your CPs, but I just wanted to mention it anyways, because it is a aspect of this pro for some writers. The next pro is number 4, and this is a bit of a niche pro, which is that sometimes the quality of a fast drafted first draft will be the same as a first draft that took 6 months or a year. This is a pro I'm taking from one of my best friends and critique partners, Annie. I will have the video where she mentions this link down below. I just remember that she talked about this once, and I automatically wrote it down for the script of this video, because I was like, that is such a good point, and I never thought about it before, because this is not my experience, and I don't know if this is a universal experience or not, but the way that Annie described it, as far as I remember, was they were just saying that it doesn't matter for them if they take a month to draft something or a year, the quality is going to be the same. And I think for me, if I was this way, I would definitely fast draft my works, because if the quality is going to actually be the exact same, obviously it's going to be a better use of your time to just draft quicker. Again, I don't know how common this experience is, or this is universal for everyone, but it's something that I wanted to mention to take into consideration, so it might be worthwhile to try out fast drafting. And honestly, I think that fast drafting is one of those things, well, while it doesn't work for me anymore, I definitely still see the appeal of it, because I was fast drafting books for a while. And I do think it's something that if you want to try out, you should, because I feel like it's a very specific writing experience that can be helpful for a lot of people. And lastly, pro number 5 is that you might be able to get your book out sooner. I say might because this isn't going to be the case for all writers, but I wanted to mention this, especially for any writers who want to self-publish, and specifically those who want to rapid release. For those of you unaware, rapid release is a publishing and marketing tactic that is specific to self-publishing, where basically authors will try to publish several books a year. From my research, this can be anywhere from 2 to 20 books a year. And this is especially common for self-published romance and erotica, especially if it's going to be placed on Kindle Unlimited. And the reason that people do rapid release is because typically as an author, when you have a larger backlog, you're going to be making more money because you have more books for readers to buy into, especially if they're connected through a series, which is why rapid release is very popular. And that could be a whole other video. There's a tons of pros and cons to rapid release, so if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend researching that, and Jenna Moresi has made a really good video on that, which I will have linked down below. And I wanted to mention this because if you're interested in rapid release, fast drafting is kind of a must if you want to get out several books in a year. And in general, even if you don't want to rapid release, or if you're going to be traditionally publishing, you might be able to get your book out sooner, because obviously if the draft is done sooner, then you might be able to move along your editing process quicker. However, I say might because especially if this is your first book, editing your book can take a really long time. And in my opinion, the most time-consuming part of the editing process isn't even editing your own book, it's getting feedback and waiting for it. One of my beta reader rounds took almost 5 months to complete. 5 months. That is a long time, literally just waiting and getting feedback from a group of readers. But again, for transparency's sake, I wanted to mention it because especially if you're a seasoned writer, this can definitely be a pro. And again, I just felt weird to make this video and not mention this pro, but please keep in mind, if this is your first book, there's a pretty good chance editing is going to take a really long time, and regardless of how fast you draft your book, 9 times out of 10 the editing process is going to take much longer than the drafting process. And with that being said, those are my top 5 pros of fast drafting. If I missed any pros that you think I should have mentioned, definitely comment down below. But now let's go ahead and get into my top 5 cons of fast drafting. Con number 1 is you can't edit as you go or as you draft the book. Now, do keep in mind that not every writer can edit as they go. In fact, most people can't. And for those of you who don't know, editing as you go literally just means that you are editing your book as you're drafting it. And I mentioned in an earlier point that a lot of people who recruit critique partners while they're drafting will make their CP's changes while they're still drafting, and that is considered editing as you go. And again, while this doesn't work for everyone, if you want to try out editing as you go, or if it's worked for you in the past, you can't really do that with fast drafting because you're supposed to be drafting quickly. And one of the things that I've seen in nearly everyone who talks about fast drafting is that you're not supposed to edit as you draft. The aim of this is just to kind of keep on going, and I think that there's almost a lot of parallels in explaining fast drafting versus writing sprints, because when you're doing a writing sprint, you are not reading back what you wrote before. You are sprinting. You are getting words on the page. Even if they're shitty, even if they suck, it doesn't matter. And con number 2 is that most fast drafts have to be completely rewritten. In my opinion, this is the biggest con of fast drafting. My opinion, I would say at least 70% of the time, if you're fast drafting a book, you are going to have to rewrite the entire thing. That does not always mean that you start from the beginning and draft it again, although you can definitely do that as well. However, I've noticed with a lot of writers that fast draft, including myself when I used to do this, is that you will find yourself rewriting a scene here or there, and then at some point you realize you've literally rewritten the entire book, even if you didn't necessarily mean to rewrite the entire book. Like, you might not always realize it, but then at some point you might see, oh shit, I rewrote this entire book. And I know that some people don't mind this, and I do realize that for most writers, you are going to have to rewrite some scenes. But having to rewrite every fucking scene in your book is literally so annoying and so tedious. And I speak from experience because the last book I fast drafted, when I realized that I had rewritten every fucking scene in the book, I was so mad. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And then con number 3 is that editing fast drafts can be more difficult. What do I mean by this? So one of the big pros of writing a standard draft that might take 6 months to a year to write is that is 6 months to a year to improve your writing. However, from my research, fast drafting could mean finishing a book anywhere from 1 week to 2 months. Now, think about that. 1 week to improve your work in order to start editing it again, or even 2 months. And honestly, 2 months isn't even that much time. Now, of course, you can do lots of reading and education after the draft is done to improve your work. So I'm not saying you can't fix a fast draft, because that's obviously not true. I think that it's easier to edit a draft that hasn't been fast drafted versus one that is fast drafted, just because you have a lot more time to improve as a writer. And it can sometimes be quicker because you're not always having to pause to educate yourself about whatever you're struggling with. Obviously, some amount of education is going to be needed no matter what. But in my experience with fast drafting, I had to do a lot more education when I fast drafted books versus when I've written them in like a standard time, if that makes sense. And next we have con number 4, which is that fast drafting for most people isn't sustainable. I say this because I think that a lot of people really love the idea of fast drafting and they kind of don't think about sustainability. Obviously, burnout is something that a lot of people experience for a lot of different reasons. When you fast draft, there is a really good chance that at some point you are going to become very burnt out, which is why I really don't think that it's sustainable. Because let's say, for example, that you are trying to write a book every 2 months. By the end of the year, that is 6 books. 6 books in 1 year. Do you think that you could sustain that in 1 year? I couldn't. And again, I'm sure there are some writers out there who are doing just fine fast drafting several books a year, but I think that for the average writer, fast drafting just isn't sustainable because writing is exhausting, it's tiring, it takes work and it takes energy. So when you're doing that constantly and when you're constantly writing, you're probably going to get burnt out at some point. And it's funny too because I honestly for a while didn't even realize I was burnt out, because when I got burnt out from writing was right when I started a job. So for a while I was attributing getting this job to why I wasn't writing, and it took me forever to realize I was just super burnt out from writing, and with the job on top of that I just like could not handle writing, and I didn't write for over 6 months because I just had no energy. I was just so exhausted from writing, and I only started writing again after I had taken a break from work and was able to focus on it, and I had realized how fucking burnt out I was. And lastly, con number 5 is that it can feel like a waste of time. I want to preface this point by saying I don't think fast drafting is a waste of time, especially for me with my experiences with fast drafting. Fast drafting helped me a lot to improve as a writer. So I definitely don't regret fast drafting my books because it gave me a lot of writing experience, which I'm very grateful for. However, sometimes fast drafting can really just feel like a waste of time, especially when you realize how much of an overhaul fast drafts usually require. Now, with that being said, nearly every book is probably going to need a bit of an overhaul after the first draft because it's a first draft and most first drafts are shitty, and if you're the exception to the rule, that usually comes hand in hand with lots of writing experience. And for me, I just felt like I was plateauing as a writer. I felt like I wasn't improving, and I really struggled to just improve my writing at all. And even after I would do tons and tons and tons of research about writing, I would just realize that I just had to rewrite the scene to make it better. And yes, I did make them better and I was happy with it after it was rewritten. But honestly, for me, it got to a point where I was like, I wish I would have just been standard drafting this book, because then I could have improved it a lot quicker and it would have just been a much less stressful experience for me personally. And again, I'm sure not everyone feels this way with fast drafting, but I have heard quite a few people talk about this and how sometimes fast drafting can really just feel like a waste of your time. So I did want to mention it because I do think that it's important to consider this. And with that being said, that is all that I've got for you today. If you like this video, definitely give this video a big thumbs up and hit that big subscribe button down below and turn on those post notifications so that you always know when I post a new video. I post videos every Tuesday, and you can follow me on social media at Ren Keeling. And you can also check me out on my website at www.renkeeling.com. And I'm actually working on overhauling my website and my newsletter at the moment, so stay tuned for more details and for the relaunch of them. I'm very excited. I think you guys are really gonna love it. And stay tuned for next week's video because I'm going to be talking about a goal setting topic that you probably don't expect. So if you have any guesses on what I'm going to be talking about, leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear your guesses. And of course, if you have a request for a future video, please comment below and let me know. I would love to try and make that happen for you. And with that being said, that is all that I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!